I'm Lynne, Director of Praxis at EFTpraxis.com.
And I'm Moore-Hafter of CreativeEFT.com.
And we've been fortunate enough to spend a little time together this weekend to talk about EFT and Inner Theater. So, Betty and I are in Washington meeting for the first time. It's so good to have you here. It is such a delight.
It's amazing, Lynne.
Yeah.
We connected, was it 9 months ago?
It was 9 months ago, and I believe we met on Twitter.
I think so. Facebook,
we were introduced Facebook, Twitter, and through mutual friends,
Yes.
other EFT practitioners. And out of that came the beginnings of a friendship that has grown deep and a collegial relationship. And Betty was in town in Washington and able to make time to see me. So we're both very excited. And we have a beautiful weekend this weekend.
Yes, we do. We're lucky. So, Lynne, this is just such a treat
Yeah, it
to
really
be
is.
together. And we're both very passionate about EFT. And you share my passion for an approach to EFT we're calling Inner Theater.
Yes.
And I think you've told me that it's changed your practice.
It really has.
So please
It
tell
really
me more.
has. I've learned so much from you already, and although I'm still in the new stages of using this, what I found is that it is really quite flexible. And you and Jade have both taught me that I can be in a session, and I'm often in this situation in which we'll have done a few rounds on a particular issue with a client, and something will begin to need something more deep, and I can sense it and they can sense it. And sometimes it will be something even as specific as the client saying, you know, I can almost feel something like a 3-year-old inside of me saying no or expressing fear. And at that point, I'll use this technique and suggest it very gently. It allows itself to be used in a very organic way, and I'll say something along the lines of, would you be open to a little visualization around this? And from that point, there's a way in, and it just flows so beautifully. And what they're able to do in the space of the time doesn't matter, but often in a very short period of time, the mind puts so many things together that I could never have reached, and even the client consciously may never have reached. Sometimes a re-greeting of an old relative, sometimes some part of themselves. There's no real way of knowing what will happen, but the resolution is often profound and moving.
Yeah.
So, as we're talking about this, one of the things, I use the technique, and since you're one of the creators of the technique, it's such a gift to have you here so that I can ask you this question, and that is really, what is inner theater? How do you characterize it?
Well, Lynne, for me, it's just going into the realm of image and story, because I think we're going into the subconscious at that point. It's a direct line. It's like a bridge into that deeper level of our mind when we allow things to take form and shape and become something concrete, an image, a figure, an animal, and then things happen in this internal story. And I think what amazes me is how easily people go there. And people often go there just spontaneously in talking, something like, you know, this feels like a huge burden. What's that burden like? Oh, it's like a weight on my shoulders, like 2 big boulders. Someone did that recently. And, you know, we speak that way anyway. Well, when you start to get an image or you invite that and start to work with it, what's amazing to me is the way adding the tapping helps the images transform. And that is really inner theater, is to allow some images to come and then add the tapping process. And then things start to change in ways the conscious mind could not have figured out. And that's what I love about it. When I feel stuck or someone feels stuck, like I have no idea what to do here, if we just start to work with that as an image, it's amazing what happens.
That really is amazing. Yeah. So Betty, to give me a little bit more clarity on what this is, what do you think is really happening with inner theater? Where is it going?
Well, Lynne, my background is in hypnotherapy, and so for a long time I've known about the power of imagery. Our inner imagery just carries such power for us. I think it's the way the subconscious expresses itself. I I think it's the natural language of the subconscious. And of course, the subconscious is that vast realm within us that has all of our feelings, really, the source of feelings, um, all of the complexity and depth of our issues, and what we might call the inner programming. And so that's where there's a lot going on, and yet the subconscious can often transform things through imagery in a way that a lot is happening in a short time. And I often just ask people, would you be willing to move into the imaginative level of the mind for just a few moments, and just what would that look like for you? That situation, for instance, someone recently was feeling stuck. What comes to mind? What's a picture for how that feels? Oh, my feet are in concrete.
Perfect.
And so that simple image was the start for some inner theater, to do some tapping around that image, even though my feet are stuck in concrete, and so forth. And that's where some of our creative language comes in, because there's some language that really allows that to flow. Anyway, it's just amazing to me how transformative the imagery is, because so much can happen, and many times we just don't know. We think, well, where are we going with this? I don't really know. And I just say, well, trust the imagery, see what happens. And when something transforms through the imagery, the feelings have been changed. The issue feels different. I'm astounded at how much can happen.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well.
Yeah.
It's been my experience as well.
So Lynne, what has stood out for you in your work?
Well, as you were talking about your own examples, one was coming to mind for me, and probably like you, I have so many now that have come to pass. But one of my clients, who's such a gifted soul, has had the experience of having a rather difficult childhood, and her father made her do essays anytime anything happened. Actually, anytime she made an accomplishment, her father put her down and made her write an essay about how awful she was. I mean, it was a terribly, terribly traumatic childhood. And we wanted to shift that, because now in her life, as she creates an incredible career for herself and life for herself, there's always a fear that something awful will happen, because he used to also beat her. And so we went into an inner theater space, and what she saw was a burden of thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of paper on her back, as if it were a backpack or an old peddler's mound of papers. And so that image came up, and we were tapping on it. I always use EFT all the way through, because I believe that's the power that shifts it so quickly and profoundly. And I said, if these papers were to move or transform, what would they like to do or become? And immediately the image came to her. They became paper boats. Boats that folded themselves off of her back and into a stream. And they all sailed away. And what she experienced in her life was a feeling of profound ease and relief. And she continues to open up and shift in her relationships and in her life, so that she's a woman of considerable accomplishment, but now she's able to experience it more and more in a way that feels safe and good and joyful. And that really is the power of EFT. There's no way I could possibly have come up with an image like that, or even gotten to a place like that, without that imagery and that transformative shift as we were tapping, and suddenly these papers that were these papers of doom and torture turn into boats that just sailed away gently. It was powerful.
Beautiful, Lynne.
This is a powerful, powerful technique, and it's been such a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you about it. And for people who are interested, Betty and I both are engaged in working with Inner Theater and EFT. Betty is available by phone or in person, as am I, and we would love to welcome you into our Inner Theater to do work with you at any time.